All right, hello everyone. My name is Nick Maselko. I represent the Neshaminy Watershed Association, and today we're going to be talking about one of the Delaware watershed's most fascinating vertebrates, crayfish, crawdad, yabby if you're Australian, caberidae if you are a scholar, or gigglies if you are Google's slightly dysfunctional AI. That's a result I got from, I think, a Reddit post on what to name your pet crayfish. So a little interesting bit about the crayfish before we get into each individual species. We will be getting 2 additional species here in the Delaware watershed, one of which was described by Dave Lieb here in the Schuylkill watershed around 2013-14 is when it was discovered. It'll be getting its name sometime this year, next year maybe. The other one was found by myself in 2024 and inspired this little presentation because just as quickly as we found it, we're set to lose it. So, moving on, the 2 things I do want to impress on you before actually we get started. The 2 points I want to impress on you are 1, the protection of our native species, particularly those that could become extirpated from the Delaware watershed, and an introduction to our invasive species that are at this moment in the very beginning stages of their invasion. Cool. So the Delaware watershed is home to 12 species of crayfish. They can be Is this working? Here we go. 4 of which are native, 6 of which are non-native, and 2 of which are of unknown origin. We don't know if they are native or are not native. Currently, genetics is determining that as we speak. Those 12 species can fall into 4 genus: Cambarus, Licinocambarus, Procambarus, and Faxonius, because not every species can rhyme. Those different genus can be broken down by the reproductive organs on the crayfish. However, this is a bit too advanced for citizen scientists, which are the individuals I want to reach out to in this presentation. Instead, the feature that I'm going to bring your attention to is the rostrum, which is the structure right between the eyes of the crayfish. So I'm just going to post our first vocabulary word, which is the rostrum. This structure right here located between the eyes. There are 3 different types of rostrum, ones that have nice rounded shoulders, ones that do not have shoulders, and punk version, which is shoulders with little spines at the end. We're going to start with the ones that have the nice rounded shoulders. In this group, we have 4 species and 2 genus, Cambarus and Licinocambarus. We only have 1 species of Licinocambarus here in Pennsylvania, and we're going to start with that guy. That guy, the characteristic that defines all of these is those nice rounded shoulders and the gonopods that form a nice 90-degree angle. So we're going to start with devil's crayfish, Licinocambarus diogenes. This crayfish is, as of 2017, only found in 1 watershed here in Pennsylvania. That happens to be the one I am representing here today. Since 2017, it has been found in 1 other watershed, for a grand total of 2 watersheds in all of Pennsylvania. So this guy is very much at risk of extirpation. The species as a whole across the US is secure, but it is at least at threat of being lost from our state. These guys can be identified by a structure known as the areola, which is on the very back of the crayfish. This structure on, am I blocking? Watch the table here. So this structure is completely obliterated on the devil crayfish. For our other Cambarus species, they will have a nice open areola. Let me move on. The importance of the devil's crayfish, the first crayfish that we are speaking here, is that it is one of our 4 native species, and it is also one of the 4 species that is at risk of extirpation from the Delaware watershed. Cool. Moving on to our next few species here. Our next 3 species belong to the genus Cambarus, 2 of which are grouped together under the acuminate complex. These species do not have names as of this moment that we are speaking, so they're just going to be referred to as unknown crayfish 1 and unknown crayfish 2. The acuminate complex can be differentiated from the other Cambarus by this nice feature called the cervical spine, which is this nice showy little spine in their neck region, like right behind their eye here. So the cervical spine is what differentiates the acuminate complex from our other Cambarus species. This is unnamed crayfish 1. Unnamed crayfish 1 was found around 2013, 2014 by Dave Lieb here in the Schuylkill watershed. This crayfish, when it's young, has a very beautiful marbled pattern. It's a very pretty crayfish to look at. However, this beautiful crayfish is only found in a few watersheds. If this crayfish is endemic to the Delaware water system, this might be its entire range. So that puts this species not only at risk of extirpation, but potentially extinction. However, we don't know that yet. We are still determining the genetics of the species across its range. It may be found in other states. So it's unclear if this is an endemic species or a species that maybe has a larger range and isn't quite at risk of extinction. Hence why I'm using the word extirpation instead of potential extinction here. But the importance of the species is it's the second or fourth species at risk of extirpation due to the presence of these guys, by the way. So these are highly invasive species that we are saving for the end. They're the ones that are moving in and kind of moving our other crayfish out. Unnamed crayfish 2. This is my favorite crayfish. This is the crayfish I found in 2024 over by the Trenton region. This species is also, I think, just beautiful when it's smaller. It has this nice greenish bluish color that the other crayfish lacks. It doesn't have that nice marbling coloration to it. Its current known range is smaller than the other Cambarus. It is known in only 3 watersheds, 2 in Jersey, 1 here in Bucks County. And it already has Burrell crayfish in it over here in Bucks County. So this crayfish, if it is native to the Delaware water system, would also be at risk of being lost. So the importance of our acuminate crayfish is that both species are at risk of extirpation, for better or for worse, assuming that they are both native species. Our final Cambarus species is the Appalachian brook crayfish. This crayfish was the first crayfish to be described in North America, and it was described here in Philadelphia. This crayfish is distinguished by its stubby rostrum and the lack of cervical spines that the acuminate crayfish displays. These guys are a secure species. They can be found throughout the entire watershed, though they are going to be impacted by the invasive species that have inspired this presentation and we will be getting into. Cool. Now you may be wondering, why all the terminology? Rostrum, areola, cervical spine. Why am I hitting you guys with these terms? That's because everyone here has the ability to take pictures of the crayfish in their native watersheds. In this case, pictures of the areola, of the rostrum, of the cervical spine, and upload those to sites such as iNaturalist or IMAP Invasives if you think you have an invasive species. Could you hand these out? Sorry. So I'm just going to hand out little magnets here for everyone to remember these features so that they can hold on and stick it on your fridge. So every now and then you can get a little look and remember that these are the features that we want to see displayed on iNaturalist for experts or citizen sciences to take a closer look at and be able to identify your pictures by. Cool. So that was the genus Cambarus. Oh, and that's just an enlarged image. I forgot about the barcode. This barcode is a shameless plug to the Neshaminy Watershed Association. Please check us out. We are a newer organization. We are getting our feet wet, and we would love to see your support. The next genus is the delicious one, Procambarus. Procambarus is the red swamp crayfish and our white river crayfish. These guys are identified by their long straight rostrum and their long straight gonopods. Procambarus in general, the species we have here are a reddish color with elongated claws and a black triangular pattern on their abdomen. The native species we have here is the white river crayfish. So this is the good Procambarus. They can be identified by their open areola, as opposed to the red swamp crayfish, which has a closed areola, as well as their turbuncles. So the turbuncles are, you are stuck to the table. So the turbuncles are the protrusions on the claws of the crayfish. And for our white river crayfish, they are unique in their coloration. This may take a while to put on. For our white river crayfish, the turbuncles that they have are this nice black or white pattern on the top, as we can see here in the image, or we can see here on the nice claws that I have here. The white river crayfish is a secure species that is found throughout the watershed. However, it has been highly impacted in the lower watershed, particularly in the Neshaminy watershed. We do have this species, but we only have this species in Peace Valley up. The entire lower watershed has been overrun by the invasive species. The invasive species, which is Red swamp crayfish. Oh, the importance of white river crayfish. It is a native species, our second of four native species that has a reduced habitat. This is the invasive species, our first of 6 invasive species, by the way. This is red swamp crayfish. So Procambarus clarkii has arrived through various means. We eat this crayfish. If you have ever had a crawfish bake, that's the crayfish right there. If you've ever owned a pet crayfish, likely you've had Procambarus clarkii. These guys, we have pet traded them to be red, white, pink, blue, any color you can imagine. So they are a very common pet species that gets dumped and unfortunately does not die out. These guys can be identified. I'm going to take my glasses off before I break them doing this. Bam, there we go. By their closed areola and their turbuncle coloration. Would you like to be a crayfish?
Sure.
Thank you. So what we can see in the crayfish claws that are being modeled for us right now is that these claws do not have that lovely black and white coloration that we saw on the previous crayfish. These guys are bright red and make the name red swamp crayfish a little easier to remember. So thank you, did a wonderful job. Cool. The red swamp crayfish is established throughout the Delaware watershed. It's been here for quite some time. It is particularly well established in the lower Delaware watershed. We're going to move on. The importance of this crayfish is that it is an invasive species, and it is one of the 6 invasive species found throughout the watershed here. I'm going to slip this guy off. Cool. Along with that, again, the importance of going over the characteristics of a lot of these crayfish is, again, I just want to hammer in the importance is taking pictures. So I want to see everyone here taking pictures of the crayfish that they observe in their backyards, in their local parks, in the state parks, anywhere you can and upload those sightings to iNaturalist. So we have here another magnet, this time of the genus Procambarus. To go over the characteristics that we just went over here for the difference between the red swamp and the white river crayfish. The barcode on here will link you directly to iNaturalist, so that way you can remember to directly send your images to that site. This also brings us to our halfway point. I'm just trying to get a vibe check here. No one is asleep. I feel I'm doing a good job. Does anyone have any immediate pressing questions on the 2 genus we've gone over that can't quite wait till the end? Cool. So we're going to move on to our final genus, which is kind of it just kind of goes downhill from this point. Faxonius, because the genus Faxonius, this is our genus that has spines on its rostrum and its gonopod split into 2 bits. I say this goes downhill because we have 6 species of Faxonius in the Delaware watershed, only 1 of which is native. This is obviously a problem. So we're going to break down each one of our non-native Faxonius species, and you're going to get to meet a few of them. Cool. All right. In general, Faxonius are brown in coloration with large claws and a varied abdominal pattern, as you can see in each of the images represented here. Our native species is Faxonius limosus, which is the spiny cheek crayfish. These guys can be found through. These guys can be identified by their nice, prominent cervical spines here that are all throughout what would be roughly identified as their cheek, hence the name spiny cheek crayfish. These guys can be found throughout the Delaware watershed. However, this is actually our 4th and final crayfish at risk of extirpation. The spiny cheek crayfish used to inhabit the Susquehanna watershed as well as the Delaware watershed. It has since been pushed out by the crayfish we have represented here today, the virile and the rusty crayfish. It was rediscovered, I think, back in 2017 in the Lackahanna watershed or one of the other smaller headwaters. So it is not completely extirpated from the Susquehanna, but it is functionally at that point within a third of the state of Pennsylvania. With the introduction of rusty and virile, The threat here is that those species can push out the spiny cheek as they already have in another major Pennsylvanian watershed. So these guys are at risk. So the importance of Faxonius lamosus is that they are at risk of extirpation. Now we're going to move on to the Battle of the Lehigh. Our final crayfish will all have their own little flags, and what makes the Lehigh very important is the Lehigh is above the salt line. We do have many invasive species already here in the Schuylkill watershed, including rusty crayfish and virile crayfish. The Schuylkill, however, empties into the Delaware below the salt line. The Lehigh does not. So we're going to start with the flag with an abdomen on it that has a black triangular pattern. There are two crayfish that fall in this category, and both of them are very similar in appearance: the northern clearwater crayfish and the Allegheny crayfish. We are in the final five here. First up is the northern clearwater crayfish. This one is a bit of a mystery when it comes to species that are not native appearing in the Delaware watershed. It isn't native to our watershed, but it is native to western Pennsylvania and is even considered a vulnerable species here in Pennsylvania. So its presence in the Delaware is quite a mystery. Also, on terms of invasive species, this guy is at the bottom, which is why we're starting with him. They occupy a very small range, only that upper red little triangular portion in the Lehigh. At least as of 2024, that is their known range. They can be identified, differentiated from the other crayfish, from the Allegheny crayfish, by this small structure on their rostrum called a carina. Hence why a very high definition image of the crayfish's face, particularly right between their eyes, that is essential when it comes to differentiating between the two species. The importance is that this species is not native to our watershed, and it does pose a slight threat to Faxonius lamosus in that it can hybridize with Faxonius lamosus, as will most of the other invasive Faxonius as we move on. So not only do they push our native species out, but they can hybridize. Species number 4. The second crayfish under the abdomen with the black triangular flag is the Allegheny crayfish, so Faxonius obscurus. This crayfish has a bit more of a hold in the Lehigh. It also can be found throughout the Schuylkill. It is found throughout the Schuylkill in areas where virile crayfish and rusty crayfish have not been able to push it out. Because in terms of invasive species, this guy is again on the lower end. They don't overpopulate to the same extent that rusty and virile crayfish do. However, they are found in the Lehigh, and that is now a problem. Their range is kind of the same as the northern clearwater. This could be potential misidentification, but they are also found in other reservoirs throughout the Lehigh too. So, fun. They can be identified because their rostrum does not have that carina, that nice little bulge in the middle. The two species can be differentiated by other features as well if you are looking at the male or female reproductive organs. But visually, if we're looking at pictures, what we're going to be looking at is the rostrum and does it have a carina or not. Cool. The importance, this species is invasive. Species number 3. Almost at the end here. Species number 3 is the calico crayfish. This is another invasive species that was recently found in the Delaware watershed in 2024. So these guys, also in the Lehigh, also also on their own little segment, not quite on the river yet. These probably came here as a bait species. You can, as of 2024, still purchase it in New York. You cannot purchase it in Pennsylvania. But in New York, you can purchase them as bait, and you can actually purchase them in bulk. If you want like 200 crayfish and think you're going to use that in a day, you are free to do that. So this probably came in as a bait species. The concern with the Lehigh is that these species will eventually reach the main river itself and move on from there to the Delaware River. At the moment, they are just in their own little ranges, and we still have a chance to properly survey. This species can be identified by its rostrum, which has reduced spines and this nice curvature in their claw that makes them unique compared to the other Faxonius species. The importance is that this species is quite invasive. Number 2. So we have 2 species left. Both of them are represented here today, and both of which are highly invasive. Under the flag with the rusty spot is Faxonius rusticus, the rusty crayfish. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take a few of these guys and pass them around for everyone to get a nice close look at them. Cool. Getting everything wet. Oh, I'm sorry, what was the question? Because these are the species that are the biggest threat to the Delaware watershed. Rusty crayfish is well established in the Schuylkill, but the Schuylkill does not connect to the freshwater portion of the Delaware. It is below the salt line. So for the years that it has been here in the Schuylkill, as well established as it isn't actively a threat to the Delaware watershed. It is also found, so Bucks County is also highlighted because they are found in various reservoirs. In the Neshaminy watershed, we have them there. They are in Peace Valley, they are in Core Creek, but they are blocked by dams. So they have not affected our native species yet. That's not to say they won't affect our native species in the future, because the future is coming very fast. Rusty crayfish is established on Salcon Creek, which is this watershed here. At the moment, this looks small, but this is quite alarming. So at the bottom, we can see this red line that comes up to Hellertown. As of 2024, that was as far as I was able to find rusty crayfish when I was out surveying. Below, upwards of Hellertown, approaching the Lehigh River, I'm still seeing native crayfish, or at least as of 2024, I was still seeing native crayfish. But the rusty crayfish will continue its march, and where it's present, they are impossible to ignore. You will flip any rock and you will see 3 or 4 of them darting in various directions. They overpopulate. They absolutely take over the areas in which they've been established, and that makes them a threat to every organism in the watershed. So the threat here is that they will continue down the Salcombe Creek into the Lehigh River and ultimately into the Delaware watershed. Once there, they will be a threat to every watershed up and down the Delaware system, as well as every watershed association in the Lehigh, as we do have many active watershed associations at this moment who meet monthly and are just great people. I'd love to see them surveying and paying attention to this crayfish. So Faxonius rusticus, they can be identified by the rusty spot on their abdomen, carapace, excuse me, as well as their smooth mandibles. So this characteristic is a little obscure, but if you are able to get a picture of the crayfish's beautiful smile, Fish and Boat would really appreciate that, as would I. Cool. So the importance of the rusty crayfish is that this is a super invasive crayfish that will be impacting the Delaware in the upcoming years. Our final crayfish is even worse. Our final crayfish under the flag with an abdomen that looks like it has V's on it is the virile crayfish. So Faxonius virilis. Let's get these guys around. Yay. Got a whole lot of water there. Our final crayfish, and in my opinion, the most important crayfish because it is having its impact as we speak, is the virile crayfish. The virile crayfish, like the rusty crayfish, is found throughout the Schuylkill. These guys are one of the few Faxonius that can't breed with the other Faxonius due to their curved gonopods. However, it's still super invasive. The threat that it poses at the moment is that they have actually reached the Delaware River. So in 2024, I was out surveying various sites up and down Bucks County. The red squares that are shown on this map are sites in which Faxonius virilis was collected. Previously, the species was not known to be on the Delaware, so this is quite alarming, and where it is present, it will push out our native species. At the moment, the population has spread up to Frenchtown, and I would predict it will continue to spread further up the watershed. In watersheds where this species is present, for example, Core Creek in the Neshaminy, where we have this population, they not only inhabit slow areas such as the Core Creek Reservoir itself, but they inhabit all the way up to the very headwaters, where the stream is no bigger than the width of my foot, and you will still find small crayfish inhabiting those areas. They also, Piddock Creek is another example where virile crayfish has completely taken over. You will find them in the Delaware Canal all the way up to the very headwaters. There is no habitat this species will not colonize. That's what makes it a threat not only to our native species, but every invertebrate, end fish, and inhabitant of the Delaware watershed. Cool. So Faxonius virilis can be identified particularly by their claws. They have 2 rows of bright yellow large turbuncles that make them unique from the other Faxonius species. Their gonopods are also curved, and my assumption is that's what makes it difficult for them to breed with our other Faxonius species, such as Limosis. So unlike rusty crayfish, which can also breed with our native species, this one just pushes everything out of the way. Importance of our virile crayfish, they are super invasive. So what can we do? What can everyone in this room do to address invasive crayfish? There are 2 things that you guys can do. You can take pictures of them. You can look at you can look at the magnets, look at the features and vocabulary we've gone over today, and upload those images either to sites like iNaturalist or IMAP Invasives. Both are great sites that take your images and put them in the hands of experts and citizen scientists. The second thing you can do is get involved with your local watershed associations. Either form them if they don't exist, or encourage the ones that do exist to get audited by the DEP in the use of D-frame kick nets. Doing this allows us to gather data on at least what our watershed looks like now, presently, before the crayfish take over, essentially. So at least one important step that every watershed association here can do is to gather data, gather what invertebrates are present, gather what IBI scores, the Integrated Biotic Index scores, essentially how healthy our stream is. Get that information now, because now is the time to act before these crayfish move inwards, move into these smaller watersheds that make up the Delaware system. So quick terminology recap. The images for the structures of the crayfish we would like to see you taking a picture of would be the abdomen, their claws, their rostrum, and if you can get a side profile to see if it has spines and is our native crayfish, that would be very appreciated. My contact information is nmiselko2@gmail.com. Please send images. Please feel free to reach out. If you are a watershed association, I myself am certified by the Society of Freshwater Science in invertebrate taxonomy. I'd love to see your samples. I'd love to help you get that information uploaded to the DEP taxomap. I'd love to get as much base data as we can now before the crayfish invades. So that is my presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
So I do a lot of macro surveys.
Excellent.
In the Assunpink and all that region. So
that is where crayfish number 2 came from.
That's what I'm about to ask you. Where in the Assunpink have you seen?
The very headwaters. Not the headwaters, the opposite of the headwaters,
Okay.
where the mouth.
Like in Trenton?
Yeah, exactly, in Trenton. Very weird location. So basically, where the Assunpink meets the Delaware watershed, that's where unknown crayfish number 2 is currently inhabiting. On the Assunpink, we did not see a very strong population of them, though. There was a record in iNaturalist that dates back, I think, 5 or 6 years. So they've been there at least that long if it is a introduced species, but we'll see what happens. So I'm thrilled you're here. Thank you. Please keep an eye out for this crayfish. Cool. Yes?
I have 2 questions. My first question is, one, can you create a key for the Delaware Basin species?
There is one in the making by Fish and Boat right now. I will probably be making my own as well. That's one thing I just love to do myself.
Yeah,
so,
no, my lab would really appreciate that. Identifying crayfish is something of a struggle for us. And my second question is, have you ever heard of the National Park Service Crayfish Roundup program?
Is that the one that takes
That's what we
place
were
in
talking
Valley
about.
Forge, or?
Yeah, Valley Forge.
Yeah, the Crayfish
Crayfish
Corps
Corps.
is what I
Yeah.
refer to them as,
So
yeah.
we're trying something similar with mystery snails in the upper Delaware. So
Very nice.
Yeah, so we were thinking like, you could probably do something very similar with outreach and watershed groups, do a crayfish roundup.
100%. I've definitely, so I attend the Watershed Association Coalition in the Lehigh, where all the watershed associations meet together a month to just kind of go over their own individual, what's going on in their watershed. So I definitely am preaching about these guys and trying to get as many watershed associations as I can audited and out surveying as I can. That's the goal for 2025. Cool. Yes?
Are any crayfish commercially raised for eating?
Yes. So I believe 2 of these species, Procambarus clarkii, if I can go to the delicious one. I have like 90 slides. Yeah, so Procambarus clarkii, one of the invasive species we have here, these guys are raised for consumption. They are, if you've ever had quote unquote Louisiana crayfish, that's this guy. If you've ever had a crayfish bake, that is this guy. I believe there are even vendors in Philadelphia that still do take Procambarus clarkii or red swamp crayfish and are still able to distribute them through as a food source, essentially. So Procambarus clarkii is one. I believe virile crayfish is also used as a food source through another company. I'm just not familiar with it, and that isn't taking place here in Pennsylvania. Yes?
My daughter lives on Manatawny Creek.
Okay.
And, that has a pretty prolific population of rusty crayfish. And they do a crayfish boil end of summer pretty much every year.
Yep, that's an effective way. Rusty crayfish are huge. They just aren't really as harvested as much, as they can't really be gathered in the same way red swamp crayfish can. Red swamp crayfish really likes nice swampy areas that can be drained and collected. The crayfish can be collected easier afterwards. Rusty crayfish prefer more flowing lotic habitats, so they're not as easy to harvest and
Right.
eat.
And the crayfish collection at Valley Forge Park is called Crayfish Corps.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. No, I love that initiative. That initiative is actually set to protect the other unnamed crayfish here.
Right.
So these guys are found here, and if they are an endemic species, there's basically one little dam between these guys and our invasive friends over here, at least on the Schuylkill. They are found in a few other watersheds that connect to the Delaware instead of the Schuylkill, but in almost all situations, virile crayfish is present in some capacity. So we'll see what happens with this particular crayfish. Yeah.
My question is, so crayfish do have sensitivity to conductivity, or rather to the chlorides that conductivity is measuring. And I was wondering if that could be a factor in the problem. I know that the problem of survival of our native crayfish is they're smaller, they're being outcompeted, but I was wondering if they might also be more sensitive to conductivity in the water. Is that a factor?
I don't know if that is a factor. If we're talking snails, conductivity is 100% a factor. Crayfish,
They are sensitive. There are places where conductivity has caused them to be extirpated, but that could be, I don't know.
Yeah, that
could be
is
literature. I mean,
an
that could be
interesting-
mountain, that could be cold, creeks or something.
yeah, that would be an interesting factor to look into. I know throughout the Philadelphia region, as a whole, we are suffering from a conductivity issue. Neshaminy Creek, we're doing pretty well. Our conductivity isn't as high as, say, TTF, Pennypack, Wissahickon, etc. But, I mean, this crayfish right here, unknown crayfish 1, it's on Valley Forge, and if you're familiar with the conductivity of Valley Forge, I mean, it just skyrockets in the wintertime.
Well, Valley Creek. then,
Valley
is
Creek,
known for-
yes.
Has the highest conductivity in the county of Chesapeake.
Yeah, it does. It's like pokes at around salt water at times. It's a very fascinating stream. That at least doesn't. So I don't have a direct answer to does conductivity affect crayfish, but I'm sure for certain species, particularly our native ones, it probably does. I just don't have a reference for you. Yes?
Are there any parasites associated with crayfish?
Oh yeah, there's plenty of parasites associated with crayfish. Crayfish worm is a common one when you are picking up crayfish. You may see a small relative of the leeches on their carapace. So that is one visual parasite. There are smaller parasites. I'm just not too familiar with them and can't really give you an informed answer on that one.
Nothing that's dangerous to,
Oh, no, not to people. Not that I'm aware of. I think you had a question?
Pardon the crayfish question, but what is the point of crayfish in the ecosystem insofar as that, other than out competing the native species, what does this matter?
Cool. So what other issues would our invasive species have? Rusty crayfish and virile crayfish are both known for digging up their environment and impacting, for example, the plant life that lives in there. We do have several endangered and threatened plants that would be infected by this. The biggest question mark in my mind when it comes to our invasive species as they are establishing on the Delaware is how will they affect our fish species, how will they affect other species? So, for example, we have shad and American eel and sturgeon. We have different fish that are moving into this freshwater environment to breed. We don't know what effect these guys will have. We don't know. I went on a bit of a tangent there. So the effects that they would have, these two invasive species in particular are known for digging up the environment and changing the actual substrate. They may also affect fish that we actively use, that we actively pursue as fishermen. Did that answer your question, or? So those are two potential ways that those invasive species may have other effects other than just directly pushing out our native crayfish. Does anyone else have any other questions? If not, thank you everyone for coming out to this presentation and have a wonderful day.